Welcome to Alan Colmes Versus, where we discuss some of the more controversial things said in the recent news cycle in both traditional and digital media, the epitome of what we like to call around here fair and balanced. Joining me today from Florida, the founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel and attorney for Kim Davis, Matt Staver. Matt, thank you very much for talking to us. Appreciate it very much.
You said good to be with you.
You said recently that gays are now imposing a jizya tax. What does that mean?
Well, I made an analogy. You know, in some countries where they pose a tax on people who do not conform to Muslim ideology. Here in America, we have somewhat like that in terms of people being fined, whether it's the farmer being fined $12,500 for not being able to have his facility used for a same-sex wedding, or the florist or the baker being fined, in the case of the baker, $135,000 or so. We shouldn't be fined whether we're living in a country that imposes a jizya tax, or certainly in America for exercising our faith that conflicts with someone else.
But unlike Muslim countries that are not secular, we're a secular country, and these are places, as you well know, of public accommodation that must be open to all comers. So it's not the same thing as a Muslim country saying, well, you're not a Muslim. Not that I'm defending that rule, but it's very different in a secular country where you have to be open to if you're a place that serves the public.
Well, unlike Muslim countries, here we have the First Amendment and state constitutional protections and state laws that protect religious freedom, and we ought to look for ways to accommodate someone's faith rather than punish their faith. And in most cases, there's a way to accommodate someone's faith, achieve the ultimate objective without trampling a person's freedom of religion or right to conscience.
What about the right of gays to marry, for example, where your client, Kim Davis, her religious views apparently coincided where they're conflicted with gays' right, as constitutionally mandated by the Supreme Court, to have marriage. So who wins in that back and forth? How do you accommodate both sides?
Well, Alan, I think that's an exact example of what I'm talking about. In fact, in December, when Governor Matt Bevin took office, he did what Kim Davis was wanting to do from the very beginning, what the Clerks Association asked to be done as well, and that is simply remove her name and her title from the marriage licenses. They can process them that way. The marriage licenses can be issued without imposing someone's values on someone else and trampling their religious conscience rights. And so that has actually been essentially resolved. The legal case is still going on, but in reality, the religious accommodation has occurred.
Well, what's
there.
the legal case? I mean, she is the clerk of the county, so her name is still there, is it not? I mean, she is the official clerk.
No.
So how is she not responsible for those marriages?
Well, according to the executive order, that name has been removed for all the clerks. And in fact, clerks do a lot of things. Sometimes they authorize, as in the case of marriage. Sometimes they just process, as in the case of other kinds of taxes or licenses. And Kim Davis just certainly can be a file clerk. She can be an administrator. But she didn't want to authorize something that conflicts with God's definition of marriage. So that accommodation has been now affected, and her name and her authority is no longer on the licenses or anyone else that has a conscientious objection. The licenses can still be issued, but her name and her title and her authority are no longer associated with
You've compared her both to Martin Luther King Jr. and to Jews in the Holocaust. Was the Jew comparison in the Holocaust a little bit over the top?
Well, I'm not sure I compared it to Jews in the Holocaust. I think what we looked at with Martin Luther King Jr., and certainly not in comparison with what he did, and she's not in the same category, and that's not meant to be, but obviously looking at analogies where someone had a belief that conflicted with the laws of the land. And in Martin Luther King Jr.'s situation, he chose to go to jail rather than violate his conscience. Kim Davis chose to also go to jail while her conscience remained free.
In terms of the Holocaust, you talked about Jews in Nazi Germany. What happened there? They removed the Jews from government, public employment. Then they stopped patronizing them in their private businesses. Eventually, they were put to death. Is that really an apt analogy to Kim Davis?
Well, you know, the thing that happened in Germany is before you got to the Holocaust, you had a precursor. That's where people were ultimately removed from public employment, private employment, from their housing, from their jobs, from their professions. And that's what happens here with Kim Davis. People wanted to remove her and others like her.
But is that the kind of thing that's the first step on the way to a Holocaust?
I think it's the first step on the way to other stigmatization and ultimately, eventually, persecution or certainly discrimination. And I think we've got to protect people's right to their chosen profession and look at ways that you can accommodate someone's faith rather than just simply trampling their conscience.
Do you believe the Pope was endorsing her position when she met the Pope?
I've never said that the Pope was endorsing her position. However, I do know when the Pope was on the plane after meeting with her, it's very clear what he said. He said that a government clerk who refuses to issue licenses to same-sex couples should have the universal human right of conscientious objection. That's clear, and that applies not only to Kim
But you know,
Davis,
the Vatican
but
put out a
any
statement saying they were in no way endorsing what she was doing.
Well, the Vatican Statement was very carefully worded. It says that they could not endorse the particular details or circumstances of any particular case, or including hers. We wouldn't expect them to. We didn't even know all the details of it, frankly, tongue-in-cheek, obviously, because it's so complicated. We wouldn't expect the Pope to endorse or specifically say the strategy or this or that was fine. But what he did say on the plane was undisputable, and that is you should have a universal human right to conscience protections, even if you're a clerk issuing licenses to same-sex couples.
Right, even though they said in no way was the Pope endorsing her point of view. Or what
Well, a spokesperson said in no way was the Pope endorsing the particular aspects of her case. Obviously, that's a carefully worded, lawyerly crafted statement, but you can't get around what he said. No one disputes what he said a couple of days later on the plane.
You know a lot about carefully crafted lawyer statements. Matt, thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Alan. My pleasure.
And you can follow Matt on Twitter at Liberty Counsel. I'm Alan Colmes. Thanks for watching.